these complex economies, they were completely virtual. If you think about, there were assets trading nonstop, right? Even today in, Counter-Strike, you see so many black market sites that are trading skins, right? So when you look at blockchain and crypto per se and the use case that it fulfills, it's spot on.
So if you want to tell us a little bit about what you're building and implementing these in-game currencies, in-game assets.
What we're building currently is a game called Stray Shot. And of course, all the items and assets are on-chain. So later players can play and they can progress weapons and items and then even get to a stage where they can choose to make them tradable. This is also, I think, what people completely underestimate, right? The gaming economy has been on a massive decrease since COVID. Why on earth? It was obvious that revenues go up during a pandemic and a lockdown because people are essentially at home and are forced to be at home. So all of this upstaffing at that time was a bit surprising. And now, obviously, we saw the decrease in revenues.
Hi, everyone. How you doing? We're back for another episode. This podcast is going to be brought to you by Time of Gaming's in partnership with the Global Game Show. We appreciate both brands and both partners for being here today. My name is Kevin Sultani from Jima Group, Jima Esports. And a quick little intro about me will come later, but we're not here to talk about us, but we do want to learn about our guest today. He's a good friend, and I've known him for a little bit now, but some people you just know in the gaming space because they know about gaming and Web3, which we'll get into. But Domenik, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
For being our guest. But why don't you get into this, and you can go as long or short as you want, but where are you in your life as it pertains to gaming, but how the hell did you get here?
Well, that's a long story. Yeah. So if we have a long podcast today.
That's what I said. I know your previous life, but it's interesting. It's interesting how we got here.
Yeah. So I'm Domenik from Ibloxx. We are a gaming studio here in Dubai. We have a very strong quantitative finance and investment background. So this is actually my background. I come from finance and investment side. I've been a fund manager, quantitative finance guy, been in Credit Suisse for the last 6-7 years before founding Ibloxx. And this is kind of like how we got here. Always been a very strong gamer when I was young. Of course, that was the only thing that we did, sports, school, and gaming, right? So this is kind of like how I got into it. I always had a big passion for gaming.
Yeah.
And and here we are.
So you don't hear that often where someone comes as a quant into gaming and to building a very successful game development studio, design, development, production, everything. You are here in Dubai, but we got to start because you said you're a gamer. Was there a favorite game that you used to play that maybe is not so popular now, or maybe it is?
Wow. There's lots of games that I played when I was young, right? Like this was the times of Commodore and the 386 and later on came the Sega and all of that, right? So I remember some of the most favorite games in the early days were, some RPGs like The Legend of Guybrush Threepwood, Monkey Island.
Monkey Island.
Those RPGs I loved. Even before that, I remember on Commodore, the Escape from Maniac Mansion, I think it was like literally one of the first early games. And then of course there were always shooters, right? The Return to Castle Wolfenstein and these ones. So these were really, really the early times. And then later on, of course, when consoles were becoming big, still loved like RPGs, kind of like Prince of Persia was games that I always played very early on. World of Warcraft.
There you go.
Command
now we're
Conquer.
talking.
Yeah. So these kind of games always, yeah.
I don't remember the ages, but I put in more of my life in those 3 years into World of Warcraft than I ever have into anything in my life. I've never studied that many hours. I've never played basketball, which I love. Like I never did anything as much as I played World of Warcraft in those 3 years. I think it was like, I don't know, like 14 to 18, which are the golden years. You're in high school. What am I going to do? Homework? No. What am I going to do? Like, I actually created a business, which was a house music radio station, which had nothing to do with anything. And I played World of Warcraft. But World of Warcraft, right? Let's zoom in to that because what a game. What an epic Literally, what an epic series of games.
Yeah.
But if you know anything about World of Warcraft out there were many in-game items. There were many in-game assets. There were in-game currencies. There was an economy. And is it ironic that if we just zoom to what now? Yeah, 20 years, 25 years in the future, Web3 and NFTs and in-game assets are now a thing. So it's incredible that back then we weren't really talking about it. So we're going to get into that. But because you also mentioned the early day consoles, it's interesting because Nolan Bushnell, the founder of Atari, who was a mentor of mine, and I was fortunate enough to found a company with, he taught me exactly that about in-game currencies, about wanting to take quarters out of your pocket and put it into the arcade, which was just arcades.
Yeah.
So, but when you bought your first, or your parents bought your first, console, it was like this spaceship had landed, and now you're playing games on a screen.
Yeah.
And you're playing with your friends.
Yeah.
So were those your favorite moments? Was like the console games before computer games?
Oh, that's very hard to say because
Analog versus digital kind of thing.
Well, yeah, you could say that, but
Yeah.
I think, it's hard, right? This is so, I'm 42 now, and I literally started gaming when I was like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old at that time, right? I think thinking back, it was always like, when you played, that immense amount of joy of solving certain issues in the game and advancing and all. So all of that was incredible at that time. Yeah. But the really interesting thing is that you mentioned basketball, actually. I didn't even know that you're such a basketball guy.
Don't look at my height, brother. don't judge the height, but I was a point guard,
Nice.
They called me, it's actually a pretty terrible name. They called me Skeeter for mosquito.
Okay.
Because I was just on you. Like if you remember Gary Payton, he was like a damn good defender. The glove.
Yeah.
I don't know why they named him the mosquito, which was kind of like, now thinking about it, pretty like demeaning, but like, yeah. Okay. But like, I also loved NBA Jam.
Yeah, me too.
Oh my God, what a game. On arcade was amazing to go to like nickel gaming stores, and then also on the Sega. I believe it was on the Sega.
Yeah, on the Sega.
And so, but remember those days where you would, also the Nintendo, if the game didn't work, what did you do?
You threw it away and you got a new one.
You
blew into
exactly.
it. You're like,
exactly.
Always.
Those days will never return.
No.
Right. Those days are long gone. That's why I asked digital versus analog, because like it's so important to know that gaming came from such a foreign place. Yeah. If the game didn't work, there's going to be people out there that don't have any idea what we're talking about. They're going to be listening like, what do you mean? So you took the game out and you blew on it? Like, what are you talking about? Yeah, that's what we did. We took the game out. You had to blow it a couple times, and you shoved it back in, and you stamped it, and somehow this freaking machine didn't break every time. But like, resilience was key in the hardware days. But you go to your passion. Yep. You like basketball, you played NBA Jam. It's not like you were a kid and you want to shoot everything, but you like tactical games, so you chose shooters. Mario was and Mario 64, when the N64 came out, was a mission based. You had to do certain things till you got to Bowser and you beat But then now computer games came up, which is like the World of Warcraft days. I want to go back to that idea of those were the first days that like in-game currencies, in-game assets. On each server, there were certain swords or certain skins and things that you needed. And if you were lucky enough to get that loot box and you got that one sword, you might have been a one of one on the entire server. True. So everyone wanted to play with you.
Yes.
Fast forward into today's world of Web3 gaming. Is it ironic that now games are being based off of that? To you, or was it always going to happen? We didn't know it then, but looking at it now, like, could have seen it coming.
Yeah, and in hindsight, you'd be like, yeah, of course, right? Yeah. Like, it makes total sense, right?
Right.
And it's not just that. It's also, when you think about these complex economies, they were completely virtual, right? Like, let's not mention crypto at the moment, but if you think about, there were assets trading nonstop, right? Even today in, Counter-Strike, you see so many black market sites that are trading skins, right? So when you look at blockchain and crypto per se and the use case that it fulfills, it's spot on.
Right. So, and then obviously the currency side. It was like gold. in World of Warcraft, which was literal gold. You would earn more gold, and you would even have a bank and a vault, and you could go and be like the leader of your clan and hold money. That was incredible back then. So it taught kids literally economy, banking, tactical strategy. Like your mind wasn't just gaming. So
totally.
But
Do you remember the ICQ days at that time?
No.
Early? So ICQ, that messaging protocol
Okay,
that was very famous in Asia as well.
Yeah.
It was all over the world. And the very interesting thing is they started trading ICQ numbers. So at that time, it was just a communication protocol to chat with each other, right? And later on, it was like becoming like cool the lower your number is, because the lower your number, the more OG you were, right? And the same principle holds true for gaming, for assets in games, no matter if they're on chain or not. It doesn't really matter.
it's funny because like those days, it was like a license plate in Dubai. The lower the number, the higher the value. But then nowadays, kids are leveling up. Like if you have, Fortnite level 500, like you put in hours. And then, but the early days of World of Warcraft it came in packs. So they first allowed you to go to level 50. And then the next pack came, which was 10 more to 60. I don't even know what it is now. I'd be lying if I told you. I think it's upwards of like 100, 110, which, okay, great progression. But I gave up at like 58. I knew that. I didn't make it to 60. It was getting way too hard and way too many hours. Funny story. My best friend, John Shinto, you know who you are. We said when we stopped playing, like we were like, because we played together, hey, how many hours have you logged? And I looked, I don't remember the number, some ridiculous number. And John had double my hours. I said, John, what are you doing? Like when I went to bed, that means you kept playing. He's like, yeah, I have like 3 accounts.
Wow.
And I was like, John, I only have 1 account. I was like, I was a tank. I was like, because the tank needed to be that you sent them in and he did all the work and then you'd come and support. He's like, yeah, I had a mage, a tank, and I'm like, what? I was like, wait. He's like, yeah, but I sold the other 2 accounts. Oh, wow. I was like, oh, that's what I'm talking about, my boy. That's what I'm talking about. That's crazy. So not only did you have in-game currencies, you had a account value that was going up in value as you put in work. Early day play to earn. Maybe, right?
You can clearly say. I mean, it was
third party.
Yeah.
It was off market, but people were trading their accounts. So I would like to say that was early day play to earn in some ways. If you're smart enough, then you could even trade gold. Like if you were a miner, all these terms, you could give your gold over or lend it, or hey, let me borrow that crazy sword you have for some gold, or sell. Tell me that's not like sophisticated.
It is, totally.
And so now coming into 2024, I know a little bit about your game and I know what you guys are doing. And you must have had some deep, deep inspiration from your sub-psychology, way back there in your subconscious from this. So if you want to tell us a little bit about what you're building and implementing this in-game currencies, in-game assets. I mean, it's super interesting.
What we're building currently is a game called Stray Shot. It's a third-person shooter, very immersive, huge worlds, obviously, and of course, all the items and assets are on-chain. So later, players can play and they can progress weapons and items, and then even get to a stage where they can choose to make them tradable. And then they're traded on marketplaces, right? It goes very similar into what Steam does with Counter-Strike and Valve, right? Where people are trading all kinds of skins and items. But instead of trading some of those on black market sites, we just want to provide an infrastructure where this is very easily possible for the players for a tiny fee. This is also, I think, what people completely underestimate, right? The gaming economy and all has been, I would say, on a massive decrease since COVID, which I think it was obvious, right? Like when you look at it in hindsight, you're like, why on earth? I mean, it was obvious that revenues go up during a pandemic and a lockdown because people are essentially at home and are forced to be at home. So of course, what do you do more? Gaming, clearly, right? But was it expected that the lockdown would happen forever? Of course not, right? So all of this upstaffing at that time was a bit surprising. And now, obviously, we saw the decrease in revenues, which was normal, right? We actually, before, pre-pandemic, numbers are pretty similar now again, right? So we could say that market bottomed out. Right. So all of this led to a situation where, a prime market, essentially, right?
So for those out there that might not know, we tried to give an example of like early day in-game assets and currencies. But in your terms, when you hear Web3 gaming, crypto gaming, virtual asset gaming, whatever those term gaming is, explain to people out there from what you're building, but obviously, what does that mean to you when you hear Web3 gaming? Do you hear blockchain? Do you hear currency? Do you hear NFTs, or is it all in one?
It's all in one, right? Like the term Web3 basically summarizes all of these different aspects, right? Because otherwise you could say, okay, it's blockchain gaming. That means, okay, certain things are on chain, but you probably don't have a currency inside, right? And then NFTs, then, okay, maybe the assets are NFTs, but again, not everything might be on chain, or there's no currency to buy for it. So the overall term of Web3 summarizes all of them, right? It puts everything under one common umbrella.
So being on chain and the Web3, so on chain would include the blockchain, obviously. Putting things on the blockchain gives them value in multiple meanings. The currency side of it, which is the language, the currency of blockchain, allows that on-chain asset to be democratized in a player pool, in a game pool, end to end. So for Stray Shot, there is a token. Yeah. That token has been able to be used in game for the Stray Shot game. For now, no other game, just for Stray Shot. A player comes on the network, they buy a skin, a gun, a map, something, anything. They can earn when they perform well in this. I'm just explaining, and then I want you to also add on to it. There might be NFTs, non-fungible tokens. Again, that third word, token, is an on-chain asset, right? The NFTs. That might be able to give you a boost. It might be able to give you extra health, protection, a new map, something, anything. As you play those new maps with those new assets, you earn more money. You earn more tokens. And the great thing about Web3 gaming is, I think, the community. The communities of Web3 are extremely strong. The more player, the more pool, the higher prizes, the more action, the more output. What is output? Once you earn those tokens, you take them and go back to USDT, money, Amazon gift cards, Bitcoin, whatever that network offers you. Did I miss anything there in a very basic?
I mean, this was very well summarized, but I think when you look at this whole Web3 gaming term in general and the huge benefits, right? Because we could probably talk for hours about the benefits that Web3 gaming can bring to gamers. But if you look at it from an economics point of view, what would happen if one of the large AAA studios would decide, hey, instead of paying all the streamers, or instead of paying for advertisements in online or in whatever form of media, let's play the players, right? Let's say a part of the revenue we're taking to pay out as rewards, kind of like an esports tournament, right? And that would make for a very interesting dynamic, right? Because I think people look at it from this point of, oh yeah, it's only the tech or it's this, but at the end of the day, it's a company sharing its kind of income with the players, right? And this is, I think, very exciting for the community.
Revolutionary.
Yeah.
Revolutionizing, the industry of gaming. Now, someone asked me yesterday, is Web3 gaming taking over gaming? I think the exact question was, is Web3 and tokenized gaming taking over gaming? We were on a panel recently, and that was almost the exact title of the panel. And the reason why I said short answer and short term, no. Long term, long answer, absolutely. And I put it toward the advent and the takeover of cloud gaming. Because I predict that in the future, a very short future, by 2030 was my prediction, that there will be no more hardware consoles made. Sony, Microsoft, everybody will stop their hardware divisions. They will all go cloud, And for that next 2 to 3 years, they'll charge you for a yearly fee, $200, $400, $500, but then each game will be less and less. After that, 2035, if I have to make a prediction, all payments to games will go away. And they will now, your currency is your time. Your currency for the payment to play and vice versa from them to you is your time. Put more time in, they reward you. Agree, disagree, and thoughts on that?
I think you're spot on in many of these aspects. I also think that the rise of Web3 gaming is, when you talk about today, is almost like I'm sometimes surprised that people don't see this as much because people don't know the numbers, right? But if you look at the first cycle of Web3 gaming, which was, let's call it as is, was like an experiment, right? Those were not like super high-end games, right? But when you look at the number one most famous game out there, Axie Infinity, and what happened in 2021 when they really got traction and took off, right? They had millions of gamers playing Axie Infinity on a daily basis. I think daily players on that time, I think were about 3 to 4 million, right? For such a small title game, right? And also, I have deep respect for what they did, but the game itself, there's millions of other better games, right? Let's be honest about that. But then you look at the financial economics behind. Axie Infinity in 2021 alone earned about $1.4 billion in revenues, right? For a game that nobody outside of the Web3 space knows, right? In terms of marketing budget, what they spend, when you look at this play-to-earn component, and you think about okay, maybe this can be perceived as marketing, right? You can say, hey, here's a prize pool for a tournament if you play, right? We all know that if you host a tournament today and you say, here's $1 million, everyone can participate, participation will be much higher than if you say there's no prize pool, right? That's clear, not just for the financial component, but also for the competitiveness, right? Because like, wow, I want to be the winner, and there's like a prize behind that. That's cooler, right? So when you look at these aspects, and when you look at what Axie Infinity in terms of rewards paid out in 2021 alone, it's mind-blowing, right? It's over $3 billion that they paid out at that time. I think the largest month was November 21, with over $660 million in rewards. Tell me one traditional gaming company that can afford to pay $660 million in marketing budget in a single month, right? You will be looking for a long time, right? So when you look at the future of where Web3 gaming can really go, to me, it's mind-blowing that people are like, even hesitant on that, right? Like that this is not so obvious. Because when you look at tech trends and you have like this first wave, often this is like a first wave. And of course, it came down because of multiple factors that we can discuss in a bit. But when you look at the tremendous amount of success that happened at that time, to me, then it's very obvious in which direction we'll go, because the games are getting better, right? Sure. Like what we are working on is quite high end, can certainly compete from our point of view with the top players in the Web2 markets. But there's also many others, right? There's really good games coming in the Web3 space that are all like about to launch, soon launching, and I think this will completely ignite a different market.
Yeah, I totally agree. The story of Axie was Web3 gaming 1.0, cycle 1.0. Yes. They led it, they owned it. Forget about the COVID bump, which was there, of course. It was perfect timing. Yeah. It was more than perfect timing. NFT bump, that hype cycle. There was a crypto boom and bust at that time, right after the COVID March 2020 boom, bust, I'm sorry. So it was like the perfect storm. They were there, they were at the front, they got it. The interesting thing for me was their SLP token. Obviously, it's the native token, the utility token of the game. And SLP was being used to pay for taxi cabs in the Philippines. That is fact. You can look it up. That's how big the economies became of a game. When have you been able to use Fortnite V-Bucks or Roblox Robux to pay your cab or to pay for dinner or to tip someone? That was happening. There's a good YouTube documentary. It's about 18 minutes. You can just, SEO will do its thing, but, documentary on Axie Infinity Philippines. You can find it. It's 18 minutes. It was incredible. Grandmothers were playing it. Whole villages were playing it. Guilds were being created from cousins and uncles and this and that and everybody, because no one had jobs. No one could work at that point.
Yeah.
But SLP token was not turning off. That's the beauty of crypto. That's the beauty of blockchain. And that's the beauty of Web3 communities. Yeah. Give them a game, build it, and they will come.
Yeah.
So now you said better games are coming. Web3 cycle 2.0. Is it coming in 2025? And if it is, competition's a good thing. Competition, we can't just do it with one axis. That's great, because it's a lottery ticket. Maybe it's you, maybe it's someone else, but competition's a good thing. If the market can have 20 good games, 100 good games, there's room for it. Wouldn't you agree? So is it coming in 2025, cycle 2.0 of Web3 gaming?
I'm totally convinced. Yeah, absolutely. I don't even think that, we'll get 20 good games. I don't think there's a future for gaming without Web3. I don't think, because when you look at all the benefits, like, why would you build anything else, right? Yeah. If there's a way, let's talk about security. I mean, you mentioned World of Warcraft, right? I mean, how often did it happen that a World of Warcraft account got hacked, right? Sure. And you lost everything. Sure. You lost your thousands of hours that you put in there, and it's all gone, right?
Yeah.
If it's secured by blockchain technology per se, I mean, hacking into an account that is on chain is so much more difficult, right, for any hacker, right? Because it's not just an online account, right? So all of these things are beneficial for it, right? And then putting part of the ownership of the game itself, of the assets, of the currencies inside, in the hands of the community, I mean, that's just a massive benefit, right? So if you have two games, and let's say they're on par in terms of quality, because gamers will always favor a better game over a worse game with money, in my opinion, right? So the times of, you can just have a game which you can earn some rewards that translate to real life, that's nice, right? But I don't think that gamers would say, wow, I'll play this game now instead of this game if this game cannot hold up and compete, right? But here's the thing. If the games are on par, and this will happen eventually for sure, I don't see anyone. Why would you play this game if you can play this game and own the assets, right? Like, I think the benefits are too big to ignore, right? And there will be a massive shift. So I think 2025, I think, it's coming now. I think we already started.
Right. So you mentioned one key point about blockchain, Web3, that's important, security.
Yeah.
The other side of it that really gets me up in the morning to fight for Web3 games is, and yet not a lot of people are building for it. Yeah. It's being less given value over, like, let's build a good game, which I'm appreciative of. But you can't have a Web3 game that's amazing with terrible tokenomics, a terrible token economy. Vice versa, you can't have a great token economy, great tokenomics with a terrible game. Is it a case of non-bias? Because I know you blew it out of the water with both. He's a quant. What did you expect? He was going to build the best token economy, but the game is damn good and it's super fun and it's super clean and high graphic and blah blah blah. But non-biased, is it possible, because it takes deep pockets, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a quant team that understands that side and a development team that side. Do you agree that those 20 games, 30 games that are coming up, or X amount of games, if they focus 50-50, because so far it's been either or even none or. So can they get by with 50-50? Is that enough in this game, ecosystem with the lack thereof? Is it okay that they do a okay token economy with an okay game?
Yeah. I don't think for the long-term full big success of any of these games to be able to compete with the biggest games in the market, I think you need both. The challenge will be solving that puzzle, right? Because it's a mathematical puzzle that so far nobody has accomplished. I would say that we are quite well prepared in terms of simulations and stress tests and all the thought that goes into that, because we feel like that's a super important point, because otherwise you'll create a game economy which will be unsustainable, right? And if it's unsustainable, if your asset suddenly let's say it was worth $100 and tomorrow it's worth 10 cents, I mean, that changes a lot of the dynamics, right?
Explain that really quickly for people that don't understand token economy. You could go from $100 to 10 cents with the same user player base. In fact, you can increase your user base. So it's oxymoronic. People think, whoa. What do you mean? What do you mean the money fell? Like if I put more money in Tesla stock and more people put money in Tesla stock and Tesla prints more cars and does more cars, I'm going to make more money. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that.
Exactly.
Because the reward mechanism on the back end is rewarding. It's giving out. It's outputting. It's outflow. It's burning tokens. It's things like that. So 100 to 10 cents is possible with an increase of player supply.
It is.
That's the power of tokenomics.
Yeah. And that's also the dangers of it, right? Because this is what happened in 2021, right? Like when you look at not just Axie Infinity, but also other games that came in 2021 or afterwards with all the move to earn projects, which are like a subcategory of obviously Web3 gaming. We looked at a lot of the math behind of these economies, right? So we analyzed, and one crucial factor is always like repayment rates, right? Like how long do the revenues last that the game essentially receives, right? So in many games, it's like, okay, you have to buy whatever digital characters or digital shoes or whatever it is, and you have to, let's say, pay $300 for it. Right, and then if you play well in the game, there's a payout rate, right? That's at least how it worked in the previous cycles, and we don't think that that's a sustainable model, because at the end of the day, what needs to happen is, as a company, and no matter if you're a crypto company or not, you can only pay out what you earn, right? As soon as you start paying out more than you're actually receiving, it sounds very simple, but I mean that's how it is, right? And we looked at all of these models, and we were like, wait a second. So this company ABC, I'm not mentioning any names because I don't want to be negative about anything, right? Because it all had its merits, I would assume. But if you're receiving an inflow of, let's say, $100, and you're paying out a return almost guaranteed if you do some minimal amount of gaming of $100 a month, what does that mean? That means you need to double your player base every single month, right? How long is that going to go well, right? So that's almost like a Ponzi scheme, right? And that's not how games should be built, right? A game can only pay out as much as it receives, and obviously it needs a certain amount of revenue to keep for itself, to run the operations, to keep working on the game. And as soon as you do more than that, it becomes very speculative, right?
Yeah.
So I think in the next cycle, what we will see is a lot of good actors. I think there's going to be great games coming. And I think that they look at this I would say, negative aspect of play to earn that happened in the past. And I think the challenge will be now a different mechanic. And this is actually, from our point of view, the biggest challenge that we have to solve, right? So let's say you have the situation where a season pass costs $10, right? And you can buy the season pass with a credit card, and you pay $10. You can also buy it with tokens. Let's say the token trades at 10 cents, right? So okay, I need to pay 100 tokens to buy that season pass, right? And now what happens is if the token goes higher and higher and higher, right? Then suddenly the token is worth $10 as an example, right? Then what does that mean? That means the season pass costs exponentially less suddenly, right? So what impact does that have on all the assets and everything? Because you always have to think you have two types of players. You have a player that comes in completely new, doesn't have any tokens, and he's like, yeah, holy shit, this asset is super expensive, right? Because he measures in US dollars, right? Versus the gamer that played already like a year or whatever and accumulated all of these tokens and didn't sell them because he loves the game, he loves what he's able to do there with it, right? You have to manage the affordability for new players and still have enough interest from the current players to provide them value, right? So this is going to be probably the next challenge, which is a much better one because that means token economy will be more sustainable long term, but it's something that also needs to be addressed, right?
Do you think that is the main reason why AAA game companies have not entered play to earn? I have to believe that it's so sensitive. Some of them are publicly listed companies. Okay, securities aside from the token perspective, which it is a securities in the Western world. Okay, that aside, we get new laws, Trump 2024. We get new laws and, something happens. At least one person's talking about it. We're actually on election day here talking about it. And we're talking about a very sensitive subject for him and I in this industry, been in this industry a long time. And if we can get any type of regulation on crypto, which adds value to the gaming market, which adds the whole loot box dilemma, which adds the whole token. Is this the biggest, going back to my question, the biggest opportunity cost for AAA game companies as to why they're not jumping in because of the sensitivity on the security side as a token? But regardless of that, the tokenization models. Yeah. It's very difficult to get right. Absolutely. It's very difficult. And then you got different currencies. Then you got different countries. Then you got denominations of those currencies. Yes. So what? A stable coin is the only answer. Yeah. Just like I believe stable coins are going to be the answer for 90% of our industry. Yeah. But is that the biggest problem for AAA game companies and the biggest opportunity?
I think the biggest problem was always what you mentioned first, the regulation side of it, right? Because many things being unregulated, unregulation, if something is not regulated, the biggest problem is always there's no clarity, right? There's no clarity for good actors and the bad actors that are doing it anyway, right? But good actors will just shy away because they will say, hey, well, look, I mean, maybe this can get us in trouble, like if we are doing this and this, right? Completely unwanted, right? So you kind of like exclude people that can build something really well. Right. Because there is no clarity from a regulation point of view. So I think this was always the biggest challenge from that end. And then the other part is in this hype cycle, right? Like where play to earn and crypto gaming really took off. We spoke about all of these rewards that were paid out, the billions of dollars, right? Which were massive, right? But you then also have to see the other side of the coin, essentially, people that lost money, right? Because people speculatively invested in certain assets with the motivation and hope that it goes higher, and then it went lower, and they lost money, right? So that always also created a lot of negative sentiment, right? Which people also looked at, and game developers and big studios, of course, they're wary about that, right? So.
Yeah, I think the regulations will figure itself out sooner than later. One candidate in America is going to push it quicker. I'm not saying the other one's going to kill it because it's not in that benefit either, but it'll go slower. To wrap it up here, what excites you most about, if we sit here in 365 days from now, in 1 year, what excites you most about gaming? Doesn't have to be Web3 gaming. I know your game and I know Web3, but it could just be in general. And what scares you most?
What excites
That's
me?
Probably a Web3 question. The scare is because it's more risk on.
Yeah, true. I mean, what excites me most is actually obviously looking into that future, right? Because when you go back and we've spoken about, the history of console gaming, with us blowing into the discs to clean them out. And then to play these games. And then later on came the free-to-play mobile trend, right?
Freemium.
And we exactly, freemium. Mm-hmm. And we feel like, okay, the next phase is going to be where communities will own part of the game, right? This is what we believe in. And where gaming companies like ours, they will have revenues to sustain everything in terms of when someone sells his item, right? Like if you sell your sword or your gun or whatever, to another player, you're very happy to pay a small commission on that, right? Like I have never heard the gamer who's like, oh no, this would be horrible, right? It's rather when those fees are super high, when you're like, oh wow, I'm getting charged here 30, 40, 50%. Yeah, that's not cool, right? But if it's a tiny amount where, part of it goes back to the gaming company to keep working on the game, no, that makes a lot of sense, right? Yeah. And then games will be more and more completely free, like you mentioned, right, before. Yeah. So I think this part excites me the most to see, this kind of evolution of gaming coming in the next few years, and I strongly believe in that. What scares me most is, I would say, this unclarity from regulators, that they're like, oh no, this is security, like you mentioned, or this ambiguity, right? Like, I mean, I would say this is something, it kills innovation, right? And I feel like that the regulator would be well advised to provide clarity, right? Yeah. And we are very fortunate to be in this country where regulators are very supportive, right? They have sandbox environments, they experiment, they still keep a good oversight over everything. So I think this is something that is really fortunate here.
The reason why I got more into esports over the last 5 years, I moved to Dubai 8 years ago only for blockchain, period, for obvious reasons. I'm from LA, not much going on. But the reason why I'm shifted away from game tech, game dev, as it pertains to Web3 gaming and early day tokenized assets was exactly this, is that there's too much gray area and a lot of people get hurt in third world countries, which are the users of most of our games anyway. So esports is in a tough period too, but it's still more, there's no like token economies and everything. In fact, we could just get sponsors from exchanges and stuff, and that's about as far as it goes. But I think I always learn a lot from our conversations because you have a different insight than I do, but we meet in the middle somewhere. I come from definitely less technical. Definitely, I was a short trader on the commodities market in Wall Street. You might have not known that about me. I was an oil short trader after college. You were a quant, also a trader, but in a different light.
Yes.
Credit Suisse, right?
Yeah, Credit Suisse.
And now we're both in freaking gaming in different parts. I'm more on the business of esports side. You're on the dev gaming side. Two of the most important industries of our future lifetime. I truly believe in the next 20 years, no other industry will be more impactful for multiple other industries. Gamification from the devs on your side and from the business and brands on our side that are jumping in that are not yet here. That's what's exciting. So I appreciate your insight. I always learn a lot from you. You can catch Dom and I at the Global Game Show in December here in Dubai. If you're here in Dubai, please join us. This podcast, again, was brought to you by the Global Game Show friends. And I'm really appreciative of companies like that and companies like yours. Ibloxx Studios, check them out here in Dubai. Our company, Jima Gaming, Jima Esports. But it's at the intersection of, you do a lot in blockchain, you do a lot in Web3. Global Game Show also has global blockchain and global AI show. It's nice to see that games are coming back. Dubai Future Foundation has done with through His Highness Sheikh Hamdan, the Dubai Gaming Initiative 2033. Amazing. So here we are. I don't think any of this conversation is possible at the speed of which it's possible anywhere else in the world other than Dubai.
I agree.
And that's not just a front for Dubai. That's why we're here. That's why we're here building, living, breathing, interacting, and playing. I'll see you online. Pick a game. I'll see you online. So again, thank you to Time of Games and Global Game Show. Thank you, Dom. Thank you, Ibloxx Studios. And I'll see you online, like I said.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.